When I moved to Sydney 4 years ago, I was mostly just looking for somewhere to go that would give me new opportunities and a change of scenery. I never really gave that much thought to the fact that I also have a rich family history here. My grandpa was born in New South Wales, grew up here, and married my granny, who moved here from Scotland when she was just a young girl. Or as she would say, a wee lass. Together, they raised my mum and her sisters just south of Sydney. They lived near the beach and would sometimes venture south down the coast for holidays or adventures. None of this was the reason I was on a train to Kiama this day. The reality is, I just wanted to shoot some Kodak T-MAX film, and I thought this would be a good place to test it out.
Next stop, Kiama.
But once I arrived at the lighthouse and started thinking about what shots I wanted to get, I couldn't stop thinking about my family watching the same blowhole more than 50 years ago, and wondering just how much has changed since then. Maybe there's something inherently pointless about photographing nature, since it's gonna look pretty much the same as it did when the last person with a camera came through. But I like the idea of photography as a mechanism to just allow yourself to observe and take in your surroundings rather than just passing through. When you combine that with a nice walk, it's basically just a kind of meditation. I think that was just what I needed. So the plan for the day was simple. I had 10 shots of Fuji 400 left to shoot. Then once that was finished, I had a roll of Kodak T-MAX 100, which I was trying out for the first time. This is the Kiama to Gerringong coastal walk, and it's pretty popular for Sydney-siders since you can access both ends of the trail from a train. I found myself interested in it because all the photos I'd seen looked less like the New South Wales coast that I know and more like the New Zealand coast. We have grassy hills leading into cliffs. I think a part of this is that unlike most coastal trails around here, this is not a national park. This means there's houses right up close to the trail, and most of the trail has farmland on one side and the ocean on the other. Before long, I'd finished off the roll of Fuji 400, and I was really happy with the results it had given me. But it was time to crack into the Kodak T-MAX 100. This is part of Kodak's professional range, and they claim it's the finest grain 100 ISO film on the market. Since it was my first time using it, I tried to meet everything for 100 ISO. But as you'll see, these negatives have some very impressive dynamic range. Already, from the very first two images I took, I find myself very impressed with the level of detail. There's no hiding if you're slightly out of focus, and the grain really is so fine that you can barely even see it. At least in these midday shots where there's plenty of light. But as you'll see later, even when it's starved of light, it still performs really well. I stopped at this tree for a while to take my time with some images, and I think it paid off. I really like this last one, and I think the composition serves the image nicely, with the stream leading your eyes to the tree. I think this also showcases nicely how T-MAX can give you a natural, low-contrast, dreamy look, which might work nicely for some scenes. Typically for black and white, my personal preference is a higher contrast, dirtier image, but as anyone who's ever color-graded log footage would know, starting with a low-contrast source that has a lot of information is the best way to get flexibility in post. So you can leave it as is, which I've done for most of these, or you can crank up the contrast later, but the choice is yours and you don't have to make all the decisions in camera if you don't want to. T-MAX is a bit different to most film stocks. It uses Kodak's T-green emulsion technology, which they won the Oscar for in 1990. Essentially, instead of having the tiny crystals which make up the film be random pebble shapes, this tech flattens them out, giving them a more uniform approach. The result is less grain and more perceived resolution. If you've ever wondered why movies made before the 90s tend to look grainier, this tech is the main reason why. It's still used on Kodak's motion picture stocks to this day, including Vision 3. But while it solves the dancing grain and shadow detail issues that cinematographers have always grappled with, photographers had differing opinions. The technical prowess on display in this film is the same reason a lot of people didn't like it at the time. There's so much detail and so little grain that it almost feels digital. For me personally, I like the images a lot more than I expected to. I'm always looking for character and I love my grain, but there's something satisfying about retaining this amount of detail on 35mm. I think in most situations I'd still reach for something like an Ilford HP5+, but if it's a scene with high detail like grass and trees, I might go for this one in the future. As the sun started to get lower, the scenery opened up, and I began to see why this walk is so popular. While it is around 12 kilometers from one end to the other, it's very easy, the views are nice, and I think pretty much anyone could do it. Black and white film is maybe not the best choice for a lovely sunset, but I hadn't exactly planned to still be out here this late in the day. Since I tried to make the most of it and just enjoy the colors with my eyes. Crazy thought, I know. It gets dark very fast here. As the sun dipped beneath the hills to my west, I watched the shadow creep across the coast, long before the pink hues of sunset began to appear. When I sent my grandpa a photo of the Kiama blowhole where I started, he immediately recognized it and began recalling the family adventures they'd had down the coast here. As a child, when I learned he was from New South Wales, I thought that meant he was from the Wales in Britain, so it's kind of ironic that now I'm the one living here. The funny thing is that the Kiama Coastal Trail was only fully opened in 2009, so there's a good chance I'm the first person in my family to be right here, since it's more than half a century since they moved to New Zealand. That's the power of memories and how we capture them as a story told 100 times, a painting, or just a simple photo. Once the sun went down, there wasn't really enough light, but I kept shooting anyway. These shots are pretty severely underexposed, but the T-MAX does a great job of maintaining the shadow detail, and these ended up being some of my favorites from the day. Overall, I enjoyed T-MAX way more than I expected to. It's a relic of a time when film emulsion was chasing the pristine reproduction that is now just expected of modern digital cameras. I've been trying to get better at leaning into each film stock's strengths rather than just bending them to my will. And I think that allowed me to appreciate the silky, elegant image that's on offer here. It feels modern, but somehow lost in time.